Hello and welcome to Top Story. 3 more primary elections in the United States on Tuesday: Virginia, Maryland and Washington, D.C., and the shape of the presidential contest later this year is gradually beginning to take shape. Republican John McCain has strengthened his already almost incontestable lead by winning primaries in Virginia, Maryland and Washington, D.C. He has the Republican nomination all but sewn up. A far tougher task will be winning the heart of his own party. The slender margin of his victory in Virginia suggests he still has a long way to go to convince Republican conservatives. And in the Democratic contest, Barack Obama has stolen a small lead over Hillary Clinton after making a clean sweep of all 3 contests, giving him now a string of 8 victories. For the moment, the tide of battle is clearly with him. But Clinton has her eyes focused on Ohio and Texas on March the 4th, delegate-rich primaries that could shift the momentum back in her favor. Joining us now to make sense of this latest round in the long battle for the White House is Frederick T. Davis of the French-American Foundation. Thanks very much for being with us on Top Story. Midway through the race for the nominations now, and the momentum clearly is with Barack Obama for the Republicans, but is he going to be able to keep it going? For the Democrats, I'm sorry, yeah. But is he going to be able to keep it going?
Well, that's what we'll have to find out. I mean, the word momentum, I think, is very tricky in these circumstances because it's already going back and forth several times. To me, there's 3 things that are fairly obvious that are happening, all of which go his way. There's some things we don't know that are happening that I'll talk about, but what we know is happening is, as you point out, he's won every single primary or caucus since Super Tuesday. That's 8 if you include the Virgin Islands. And he's won them quite decisively. He got 64% of the vote yesterday in Virginia, close to a 2-to-1 advantage. He appears to be making headway in some of the demographics where women and to some extent working class blue-collar voters are shifting his way. That's one thing. 2, as you point out, the delegate count. At the end of Super Tuesday, Senator Clinton had a distinct but surmountable advantage. That's now shifted, and Senator Obama has a distinct but clearly surmountable advantage.
You mentioned that, the point about broadening his electoral appeal. It is interesting. He was expected to win these 3 primaries, but what's interesting about it is that he does seem to have broadened his appeal out to beyond. I mean, he wasn't just appealing to the black electorate before either, but he's certainly beginning to pick up votes, more votes among women, more votes among Hispanics, and that really wasn't expected, I don't think, by the Hillary Clinton camp.
Yeah, I don't think we know too much yet about the Hispanics. He's always done well among young people. The issue is whether he can get into blue-collar families who are threatened by the economic issues, and particularly older ones. What I haven't seen any statistics yet is whether he's making headway among Catholic voters, with whom he's done very badly. On the delegate count, as you know, a win in a state does not necessarily translate into massive delegate advantages. You can actually win a state and get less than 50% of the delegates. But he's catching up, and he's probably ahead of her now, depending on how you count them, although not insurmountably. The big dynamic, and I tend not to use the word momentum, but the big dynamics really since the beginning of the year is his fundraising advantage. He raised $32 million in January. He had 170,000 new contributors. Since Super Tuesday, he's been going at a rate of 2-to-1 for Senator Clinton. Every dollar she raises, he raises 2. And that bodes well for him.
That's phenomenal, given the strengths that Hillary Clinton had before. It was expected
she has name recognition and her husband's contacts as well as her own. She's a formidable politician. But when we look ahead to Texas and Ohio, he's already out there on the airwaves with Spanish-speaking ads and the rest. So of the 3 dynamics, namely votes, delegates, and fundraising, the fundraising dynamic is clearly in his favor. It could be significant.
Do you detect signs of panic in the Clinton camp? She got rid of her campaign manager last week,
and her deputy campaign manager yesterday. And then there was a conference call with her supporters that was reported. I obviously wasn't on the call, but apparently some of her longtime supporters are getting uneasy. It's not panic. I mean, she's an extremely well-organized, very, very competent person, and she's not panicking.
She's clearly pinning her hopes, though, on Ohio and Texas, delegate-rich primaries. It's a risky strategy, though, isn't it?
Well, what's her alternative at this point? I mean, she thinks she may well win there, and she may well. And I think that if she does not win either of them, and possibly if she does not win both, I think she's going to have a hard time keeping it up. What we don't know, though, is what's going on or what might go on with the superdelegates.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. They're the big imponderable, aren't they? Could you explain to our viewers what the superdelegates are?
The history is that in 1988, the party made a decision to have sort of some counterweight to the primaries and caucuses. In 1988, the presumed establishment candidate and ultimate candidate was Walter Mondale. Gary Hart, who was then a young, very attractive senator from Colorado, was mounting a campaign. And what they wanted to avoid was his winning enough primaries so he couldn't necessarily win, but he could be sort of an annoyance factor right up to the convention. So their number, 20% of the delegates are not elected. They can vote for whomever they choose. They're not. When I say not elected, they're not controlled by the primaries. What we don't know is whether there will be some kind of effort to coalesce them one way or the other well before August. The chairman of the party, Howard Dean, said he wants that to happen.
How important could they be, do you think, in the Democratic race?
Absolutely, they'll decide it. I think mathematically, it's almost impossible to conceive that either Senator Clinton or Senator Obama will put it out of their reach.
So this is going to go right to the wire, you think?
No, I think it may go to the wire, or it may be that in, let's say, April or May, that group of people who are party leaders, the superdelegates, will either under the leadership of Chairman Dean or on their own conclude we have to make it clear we're coalescing around one or the other. That may happen.
What about the Republicans? John McCain way out front. How much damage is Huckabee doing by staying in the race at this stage?
I don't know. My own perhaps cynical view is not much, in the sense that the people, the voters to whom he appeals, I don't think they're going to vote Democratic anyway. I think the real issue is whether he's getting bargaining chips and possibly whether he can wangle being named to the vice presidency. But the notion that evangelical voters are going to vote for Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama, I think, is slim.
It's almost inconceivable, isn't it? Well, but he by staying in, he is exposing the cracks in the Republican Party.
He's exposing the cracks. I think that issue is exaggerated a little bit. I think that at the end of the day, there still is a relatively coherent reason why his voters and McCain voters will vote Republican. And with that, we're going to have to end it, I'm afraid. That's all we have time for today. Thanks to our guest, Frederick T. Davis of the French-American Foundation here in Paris. Join us again tomorrow for another edition of Top Story. Goodbye.